So hello and welcome everyone to this second open mic session from Novartis Campus. My name is...
Keine Präsentation.
Yeah, I'll start my presentation in a bit. My name is Rahel. I'm the community manager at the Switzerland Innovation Park, Basel area, Site Novartis Campus. And I'm going to lead you through this session today. And so let me share my screen very quick with you. So now I hope you can see my presentation. Leah, you let me know if that didn't work. This is actually the second in a series of open mic sessions to show you what's going on at Switzerland Innovation Park, Basel area. As we are based on Novartis Campus, but like most of you are currently in home office, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to introduce you and also all the Novartis employees who have joined us today in this session and are normally working from campus to get to know their new neighbors. And of course, we also would love to create some business opportunities for all of you and introduce you to potential partners. So who knows, maybe at this event, you will meet a future partner. Today, we have our resident company, Docdok.health, presenting. Docdok.health was founded in 2017 and is now a multi-awarded health tech startup from the Basel area. They are developing a digital platform that connects healthcare professionals with patients. But before we start off, I would like to give you some background on who we are and what we do. So here we go. Actually, the Switzerland Innovation Park Basel area is part of Switzerland Innovation's network of science parks. And we work as a catalyst for innovation and progress. This means that we engage, we connect, and we support people with ideas and passion in the fields of biotech, medtech, digital health, health tech, and industrial transformation. Our park is managed by Basel Area Business and Innovation. This is the local innovation and economic promotion agency in the Basel area. Last summer, we actually opened our latest park on Novartis Campus, offering infrastructure and office space to young, innovative ventures in the digital health sector. Now, further supporting us on our activities in our site on Novartis Campus is the Day One Healthcare Innovation Initiative of Basel Area Business and Innovation. The initiative is on a mission to help shape the future of health by building up a community and a network that you can connect with, hosting inspiring events and running an accelerator for young, innovative startups and many more things. And as an information, the latest accelerator run is going to end of June. And on June 17th, the startups that were selected will actually present their projects and what they have achieved during that phase to a wider audience. So if you're interested, please make sure not to miss out. The registrations are now open. Today's program looks as follows. We will start off with the Docdok.health presentation in a minute, and then which will be followed by a live Q&A session. And then at 2 p.m., this is the official end of the event, you are most welcome to join the networking session with Docdok.health to further engage with them. Today we are using Hopin. For those of you who do not know the platform so far, it's quite easy to use. If you see me now, you are on the main stage. Afterwards, this is where the presentation will happen and also the live Q&A session. Afterwards, for the networking session, you can go back on the left to event and change to the networking session. During the event, everyone is muted. If you have questions and comments, please use the chat on the right. For questions for the Q&A session, please use the Q&A section of the chat. And I'm very much looking forward to receiving your questions and bringing them up in the Q&A section. So now I would actually like to invite Ulrich and Yves to join me on the stage. Ulrich is the CEO and Yves the CMO of Docdok.health. So please, Ulrich and Yves, I'm ready when you are. Please join me.
Yes, we are here. Can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Perfect. Can also share my screen if you want.
Perfect.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, thanks, Rahel and the Swiss Innovation Park team for having us today. It's a great honor and pleasure to be the second startup to present ourselves, which we'll do over the next 15, 20 minutes. I'm actually sitting here right at the Novartis Campus. So life is getting back to Novartis Campus, which is good to see. So maybe we start out with introducing ourselves. Maybe if you want to start, and then we take it from here.
Yes, thank you very much, Ulrich, and also the Swiss Innovation Park for hosting us today. My name is Yves Nordman. I'm a co-founder of Docdok.health, Chief Medical Officer of the company. By training, I'm a physician. I'm as well US certified and Swiss certified. I worked in both worlds, so to say, clinically, but also in research. And over the last 15 years, I'm very much heavily involved in digital health entrepreneurship. I co-founded several startups in the field, the most famous for sure, Welldoc in the United States company. It's the first FDA approved app in the world, in the history, since 2008 in the field of mobile diabetes management. I'm also one of the founders of Oviva, very active in the United Kingdom in the field of mobile nutrition counseling. And I'm very happy to share with you some thoughts on Docdok.health and the Netflix of healthcare. Ulrich.
Yeah, briefly about myself, Ulrich Muehlner, CEO and co-founder of Docdok.health, formerly with Novartis, so it's therefore a great pleasure to be back on campus. I was here for about 8 years in several roles, mainly in corporate. I was heading corporate strategy for a while, and then also in charge of tech partnerships globally, setting up partnerships with companies like Google, Wearable, IBM, but also several startups across the portfolio of Novartis. Prior to this, I was with the Boston Consulting Group, major consulting firm, mainly consulting healthcare and pharmaceutical companies. And background-wise, I have a PhD in molecular biology and a biochemist by training. So maybe if you have asked themselves why we have called this session, building the Netflix of healthcare, maybe it's a bit bold statement, maybe it's a fun title, but we liked it. But I think there are also at least two reasons for us why we believe there's at least some analogy to Netflix. One is, as you will see later on, we will use data, in particular patient-generated data, to develop and derive a personalized experience. While Netflix, has a personalized consumer experience using your data as a consumer, we will aim for building personalized healthcare solutions based on patient data. And the second analogy is that while Netflix is providing content, but also using partnered content to provide this to their customers, we also build our own content and also partner with companies, again, from small to big, to provide them on our digital platforms, which we also will show you in a minute in more details. About the company, a few facts. Rahel mentioned already, we are quite young, founded in September 2017 in Basel, Switzerland, but we are actually a dual country company. We are based in Switzerland, but also in Israel. Yves, my co-founder, is sitting there, but also more importantly, or as importantly, our IT team sits there. As you can imagine, a great pool of talent in Israel, also quite entrepreneurial mindset, quite experienced founder team, but also quite experienced technology team. We have already been selected for several very prestigious health accelerator programs. For instance, the Health Hub in Vienna in 2019. We are a member of the ARC-Sheba Innovation Hub, one of the most prestigious accelerator programs in the world at the Sheba in Israel. And last year, we also successfully completed the Play Beyond Bio program with AstraZeneca, which also led into a partnership with AstraZeneca. Rahel mentioned we got a few awards which are shown beneath. I don't go into details. And we have also quite an impressive roster of companies as partners and customers, ranging from hospitals to tech firms to pharmaceutical companies. So we will now dive deeper into our platform and also give some showcase. And at the end, of course, there's opportunity to ask questions and to engage with us in whatever shape or form you like. So I hand over to Yves now to take it from here.
Thank you very much. Can you now see my screen or multiple screens as I see?
Multiple.
Now you see one, hopefully?
Yes.
Perfect. So it might be a surprise for some of us here, but 1 out of 3 people around the globe are suffering from multiple chronic diseases. And the state of the art in monitoring, but also treating those diseases is still based on, I would say, mostly intermittent and subjective assessments. And I think in our world and time, we can ask ourselves, how can that be? The world is really waiting for data-driven, personalized solutions for chronic disease management, and Docdok.health has created just that. The goal of our solution is to empower healthcare professionals as well as patients to enable personalized treatments and, of course, to reduce healthcare costs by doing so. We use the following tools in the hands of the patients, a very powerful thing that everybody always has with him, the smartphone. Then we have a digital solution connecting healthcare professionals and the patients, integrating subjective and objective data in a continuous way with intuitive and actionable data representation for both the healthcare professionals and the patients. So what you see here is in an overview on the patient side, dedicated apps on the healthcare professional side, mostly integrated into their primary system dashboard views with all the building blocks you see in the middle of the page to make this experience as good as possible, including device hub for objective data, survey patient-reported outcome tool, content management system, as well for processes, as well as for medical applications, AI engines, and in the background also a study module, because everything we are going to do and we are doing is supported by real-world evidence. And we are mainly active, I would say, in 2 big business areas. One is really digital communication, real-world evidence, where we have a GDPR-compliant platform. And on the other hand, we really also have medical device certified, so-called digital therapeutic products. So in general, we live in a world where we believe in healthcare. We can only achieve something if we develop and also commercialize within a top-notch ecosystem. We are very proud that we are collaborating and working and having as partner 2 of the world leading hospitals of the world. On one hand, University Hospital Zurich, on the other hand, Sheba Medical Center in Israel, both part of the ARC. Actually, ARC is a product of Sheba Medical Center, as Ulrich mentioned, one of the leading digital health ecosystems nowadays. Commercializing digital health applications, I think it's a case on its own. It's not so easy, and that's why you need big muscles and big partners. We are currently already active in 5 countries. Per country, we have usually different, I would say, key partners. In Germany, for example, it's the German umbrella organization of specialized physicians with over 160,000 doctors as members. As you can imagine, if you have an app on prescription, the doctors need to stand behind this and prescribe the apps. So we are very, very happy with this collaboration. On the other hand, also pharma companies like AstraZeneca co-developing, co-commercializing with us, as Ulrich mentioned. Let me give you a few use case examples so you understand maybe a little bit better concretely what we are doing. So this is one example that we implemented during the Corona crisis for one of the leading private hospital groups in Austria, the Vincenz Group. As you may remember or not, there were certain times ambulatory services within hospitals were completely shut down, and other times where a lot of the staff was in a situation where they could not come back to the hospital. So here we implemented, through the website of the hospital, a digital waiting area, a digital way of connecting the patients with their doctors, all within the Docdok platform. Another use case, a very successful one we implemented together with University Hospital Zurich, the ETH and the IBM. We basically did a kind of a hospital at home pilot project where everybody that was hospitalized at University Hospital Zurich was basically released from the hospital with our system, both subjective with surveys, but also with the device hub at home. And we brought all the data that were, again, patient generated back to the hospital. On the left side, you see the dashboard view for the physicians. And of course, this is within a study to get some better understanding and knowledge about the long COVID syndrome. We were able to generate some very novel insights here, a view into COVID-19 disease progression over time. This paper will be published shortly, so I'm not in a position to disclose too much today, just show this as a teaser. I told you that Germany is a very interesting market. There was a change of law since last year. Apps on prescriptions are paid by health insurers if you are on the so-called BfArM list, highly regulated process. And here we have this exclusive partnership with this German umbrella organization of medical specialists with 160,000 doctors, where we have a very clear entry to the German market. Also during the Corona crisis, together with our German partners, we released and launched an app called DIFA-1 with the goal to track the efficacy and the safety of COVID vaccinations. We enrolled here mainly healthcare professionals themselves who received the vaccine in order to be able to answer questions like how long is the vaccine really doing its job, and also is it effective against mutations. This study is up and running, over 1,250 healthcare professionals already enrolled here, and it's an ongoing project which then also produces dashboard views like this, really a kind of COVID-19 vaccination surveillance dashboard where you get insights also on a cohort level. The other product in collaboration with SPIFA and DIFA in Germany is the so-called DIGA-1, which is a CE-certified medical software, which is right now in the fast-track process of BfArM, so hopefully being reimbursed soon in the German market with a very broad application. It's a smart chatbot-guided medical appointment preparation and patient support program for most of the chronic diseases, which can be used before or in between consultations, has add-on modules. And for example, here, quick view on the patient side, it gives you your appointment preparation really at your hands in the smartphone, the smart chatbot guiding through a lot of questions, and then it's producing an executive summary of the findings towards the healthcare professionals at the day of the visit. Another important project, Ulrich mentioned our work together with AstraZeneca and ARC. This is our first product in the field of respiratory diseases, asthma and COPD. We are co-developing with University Hospital Zurich and Shiba Medical Center, where we use the smartphone to detect a lot of the important symptoms like cough and wheezing at night, like, again, surveys, patient-reported outcomes, but also physical activity levels. And we sense the local air quality and pollen in order to change the current state of the art in asthma and COPD management from being intermittent, subjective, and intuitive, really to become continuous, objective, evidence-based with a digital biomarker. I give back the word to Ulrich, and then I think we are open for the discussion.
Thank you, Yves. Yeah, I hope this overview gave you some flavor of the breadth and depth of our work and our digital platforms. This slide here is aiming to summarize this a little bit. So as you have realized, we are really at the patient healthcare professional interface, and you see from 1 to 5 really our, let's say, partnering and collaboration areas, from connecting those from a communication aspect through our Docdok platform to capture data, prose and objective data through generating insights, deriving digital biomarkers, for instance, but also generating big data and advanced analytics, to really generating impact on the patient side through patient support programs, and then ultimately, as Yves has also shown at the end, developing digital therapeutics, or as it's called in Germany, DIGA. So we would very much look forward to work with you And if there's questions, Yves, if you can go to the last slide. This is our contact information. So we would very much look forward to interact with you. If there's anything in our presentation that you found appealing and you want to discuss further later on, please reach out, and we're happy to schedule follow-on conversations with you. With that, I hand back to Rahel, and thanks for this great opportunity to present ourselves.
Thank you very much, Ulrich and Yves, for this insightful presentation. I would like to now open the round for questions. I saw that we have received some in the chat. Let me pick them out. So Xenia is asking, what is your business model in Switzerland? Can you comment on that?
Maybe I take this. It depends on the customer, obviously, and maybe I didn't say this explicitly enough. Our customer is either hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, or healthcare payers or insurers. And then depending, of course, on what we are offering and what the use case is also along this 1 to 5 circle I showed at the end, we have different business models. It can be a software as a service model. It can be project-based. But I would say, in a nutshell, it's a software as a service model with, let's say, flavors of it.
Thank you very much. Then there's one from Dominique. Do you also collect OMIC data of patients and clients? And do you recommend medication? Sorry, now it moved. Based on these assessments, how could personalized gene therapies fit into this?
Maybe I start, and if you can chip in. So I think also a general principle of our company, and maybe this puts us apart from some other companies out there, we always believe in this hybrid model. So we don't, let's say, develop solutions which are just patient-facing and leave the patient alone with, let's say, some digital gadgets. Our tools are meant to connect patients with the let's say, physicians or healthcare professionals, but of course then in particular enable the in between, before and after consultation, as Yves has shown for the DIGA1 example, and then of course collect those data, make meaningful insights out of the data, but then also present them back to the physician, and the physician at the end of the day is the decision maker. So we are not, for instance, an ADA, which is giving recommendations or, let's say, diagnosing patients simply based on input. We are always kind of matching patients and physicians and believe in this hybrid model. But maybe if you can add some further light on this.
I think you did a good job, and I think there are many more questions, so maybe we can continue with other questions.
There's also this breakout at the end where we can also discuss, I think, after 2 p.m. in more detail.
Exactly. So I would just continue. Karin is asking, the University Hospital Zurich has a vision of treating patients at home and reduce hospital infrastructure. What are the limits and what are your thoughts on this future model?
Yves.
Yeah, so maybe I can start here. Actually, there is a prediction from Sheba Medical Center in Israel, which is leading in a lot of different things, and I think we should take their opinion very seriously, that approximately 80% that are currently hospitalized of the patients, in 5 years, they will be treated at home. So if you see this number, you can imagine that we are talking here about a major shift in healthcare that is going to happen, has also to do, of course, with cost, but also with advances in technology. There are certain centers in the United States, they already have, I would say, usually on the lower levels of the hospital, almost like a NASA center where they are supervising multiple patients at home. And it's going to be a kind of a new education also for medical professionals, being able, to do such a job, more to be like, in the cockpit of an airplane and to guide patients at home. So I think it's a big trend. It's going to happen. We need to be prepared for it. Also, the hospitals need to prepare for it. Of course, there are always limitations, whatever needs, I would say, close contact and close physical interaction. At this point in stage, we are not there yet. But again, Sheba, for example, has even robots that are able to look at the patients, let's say, in highly infectious disease areas. So we are very much looking forward what the future is bringing us here.
Okay, great. We received quite a bunch of questions now, so I'm just picking one that has been upvoted. Just a comment, you can upvote questions that you find very interesting. Nelly asks, what is the consent process for patients?
Yves, you want to take this as well?
Again, depending on the context, we show that we have different ways of interacting with the patients, be it in clinical work, be it in studies, and of course it has also to do with the risk level of the studies on how much consent you need, be it a written signature or can it be a click in an app. In general, there is always a kind of a patient consent on some level to use this. That is, I mean, law that this you need to do. But again, it's very much, I think, according to the use case. I don't know, Ulrich, if you want to add something.
No, I think, yeah, it's good.
Then maybe something about the geography. So are there geographical hurdles to get access to patient data? And what are you doing to overcome these?
Well, we are mainly active in the European area, and of course in the EU. And I also see that on the right hand side there are some questions I think related to this. There's GDPR, so you have to comply with GDPR. Obviously, I think this is a must and not a nice to have. So you're of course 100% compliant to that. Switzerland has some, let's say, modifications of that, but for instance, we have our hosting in Switzerland. We have hosting in the EU. Of our services, and so EU-wide you have the same regulation more or less. But then of course, if you go outside, there's country by country a difference that you have to address. And again, as we said earlier on, also Yves, it depends also a little bit on the use case. If it's a study where we have a couple of projects, then you have really a very defined consent process. And then, of course, patients are aware that they are part of a study, and they're also aware what will happen with their data. Of course, the data will be, taken care of, like anonymized or pseudonymized, and then only in that shape or form further analyzed, right?
And then I'll bring one last question before we end the official Q&A session. So, who is your paying customer? Is it hospitals, pharma, industry, or patients or health insurance?
So it's almost all of the above, except for patients at this point in time. So again, it depends a little bit on the use case and the model. So if it's a study, for example, it's often pharma companies. If it's our communication platform, as Yves has shown in the first use case examples that we, for example, have in the Vincent's group in Austria, then it's the hospital who is paying. If you're now going for the DiGAs, it's the German health insurance system who is paying. But it really depends on the use case and the specific product we are launching. But I would say we are more or less playing in the healthcare space, and except for patients paying out of pockets, we are targeting almost any potential customer and let's say interaction mode.
Perfect. I would suggest to end the official part of the event here. For those of you who have a hard stop, I thank you very much for participating, and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. For those who have time and would like to further engage and also bring up their questions in the networking session, can now make their way to event on the left and then join the networking session. There also people can put on the camera and the microphone and ask the questions directly. We have about 20 slots in there, and of course also a chat where you can write your questions. In that, we also will post a quick link to a survey that will be very helpful if you have the time. This should be in the event chat to fill this out. So I thank you very much for participating. This was the second open mic session. We're planning on having 2 more by the end of this year. If you would like to get in touch with Docdok.health, with Ulrich or Yves, or with the Switzerland Innovation Park with us, feel free to reach out. That would be great. And yeah, join us now in the networking session. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thanks to all for listening and take your questions, of course.
Exactly. So on the top right, it says share audio and video. If you would like to pose your question in person, please use this function. I think we can have a nice little discussion here. Otherwise, you can again pose your questions in the chat and we can pick them up from there. Maybe I can bring up one question that I have from the previous chat. That's from Nelly. She asks if the application has been used in decentralized clinical trials.
If you want to take it, or shall I take it? Me? It seems the video sharing is not working. Should I answer, or do you want to answer the question? Okay. So we have used it in decentralized trials from a real world evidence setting, or like observational study setting, which is like post market approval situation. We have not yet used it in regulatory settings, but this is definitely an area which technically we can do and support, and we are definitely also willing and eager and interested to embark on. But technically, this can be done, and you have really a very broad set of features supporting decentralized trials, like, for example, capturing patient-reported outcomes, disseminating content like education on the trial itself, but also, of course, disseminating or capturing objective data through devices. So this can all be done. But I think the specifics probably need to be discussed in more detail. But technically, doable. And we have done this in observational studies already. Hope this answers the question of Nelly.
Thank you. I think Nelly tried to turn on the camera, but it didn't work. There is one more question now. If you have any challenge to identify or anonymize sensitive patient data, and if yes, how do you handle it?
If you want to take this question on the process of anonymizing or pseudonymizing the data. Yves?
I don't hear you very well. I don't know if I'm the only one. Rahel, could you hear already well?
We can hear you very badly, actually.
Yeah, you have some issues with your either microphone or I don't know. You sound like from a I don't know. Well, we have a process in place to do so. So we collected the data in a database, and then we have a process in place and established to de-identify the data, and then it depends a little bit on the protocol, which has been, for example, agreed with the ethics committee what the particular procedure has to be. But as with any good study, we have approval from ethics committees and follow those guidelines of data handling and so forth. And then the other thing is we have a data security officer in place who also is reviewing our processes and is in charge of data privacy, let's say, procedures.
Great. Then there was another one from Matthew that just came in here in the chat. What are the main challenges when you founded the company in 2017?
That's a good it's a good question. But maybe so the company itself is maybe a bit unusual from the start because it's not a, let's say, de novo startup. We actually did technically a carve out from another company, which is one of the companies that Yves has also founded in the past, Medicus. So initially we had Docdok built as part of the Medicus company, and then we decided to split those companies in two. So therefore we did not, let's say, started on the green field or on white paper. So there were some technical legal things to overcome. Besides that, Yves, what would you say were main challenges at the beginning? I mean, as a startup, you have always challenges. There's not a beginning and end of challenges. But I would say at the beginning, of course, it's you have to put yourself on the map, right? To being known and seen. I wouldn't say we are now as famous as Netflix, obviously, despite the title we have chosen. But what we do realize that over the last 3 to 4 years, we became a bit more known in the network, and we get, of course, people reaching out to us, and this wasn't the case in the first, I would say, year or so, right? So if you want to put this as a challenge as well, but maybe if you have other challenges.
Yeah, maybe, from a financing perspective, I think we have a lot of experience in talking to venture capital. And I think most venture capital did not understand yet that there is a significant difference between a consumer-oriented company, let's say, or a consumer device and healthcare. So there is sometimes a lack of understanding how healthcare is working. So I thought this was quite a challenge to overcome here the barriers, but obviously we were at the end successful. On the other hand, I think that one of the biggest hurdles to overcome in healthcare is staffing, to find the right people that bring the right mentality. We are also physically not working in the same office. We have 3 offices so far, or even 4, 2 in Switzerland and 2 in Israel. So that's always a challenge, to keep the team together. And that was a big advantage for us during Corona, because when everybody started to work remotely, we already had our 3 years of experience before. So we could teach others on how to work remotely, because that was from the beginning the case with our company.
Great, thank you. So Alex, since you are actually live, would you like to address your question in person?
Thank you, Rahel. So I'm one of the founders of Medical Insights, and I'm really pleased because we are moving our offices to yours, to the Novartis campus. So I'm looking forward to meet you in person. But and thank you for this great presentation. So my question is, do you also foster healthcare professional to healthcare professional knowledge exchange, to exchange experience and so on?
Yes, yep. We do. So I think we try to make the point that our platform is very broad and very generic. It's not only connecting healthcare professionals with patients, it's also connecting healthcare professionals with healthcare professionals. So we implemented, for example, a big project together with one of the big European associations in a certain disease area, where the use case was the following, that very frequently you have very young doctors at a hospital in a night shift, almost alone there with the patients, some kind of difficult cases. So we were asked to provide our platform in a very easy way that, let's say, clinical data, but even movies, pictures can be shared with experts instantly. And I think it's a very good use case, very helpful, also helps the patients, helps the young doctor, and it can also be used then for teaching purposes. For example, we can then generate a library of the cases that are in there. So that's, of course, something that is very, very important. We can also nowadays support healthcare professional exchange within standard video consultations like we have here, for example. So inside a hospital setting, of course, also the specialists can communicate within our platform via video, for example.
There is one question on the risk level of the software. Would you like to comment on that?
What do you mean by risk level? Which area?
It says the risk level of the software.
Okay, so we can pick the risk. We can pick the risk here.
I think it refers to the medical device certification, I guess.
Probably. We can define the question our way we like. So so if the question is meant towards the medical device, it's a class 1 device, which then also explains the risk level. In general, I think our software, as I also said earlier in the presentation, we are not, let's say, for example, providing medical recommendation through software. So it's not that you put something in and then you shake the software, and then the software tells you you have whatever type 2 diabetes. This is not what our software does. Therefore, the risk level is by definition lower than those tools which provide, for instance, through artificial intelligence, this kind of, let's say, diagnosis. That said, of course, we are also providing triggers, I would say, to physicians, and this has to be reflected in risk assessments, again, which we are doing within the remit of medical device certification. This is a very sophisticated process of assessing your software against, I don't know, 80 different types of risks, and we have gone through this very detailed, but at the end of the day, it's a class 1 device. The digital therapeutics.
Good, thank you. There is one question on whether you have capabilities to deliver tailored educational materials based on AI, ML to patients.
I mean, that's at the heart of what we are doing in different products. So the answer, that's exactly what we are trying to achieve, to be much more personalized, to be able to tailor the content that a certain patient is seeing in a meaningful manner. I think one of the questions that we saw before in the other big group, how is this accepted by patients? And we see really a very big acceptance from very young users to very old users. I think we mentioned one of our use cases is in chronic lung disease, generally a very old population. And I think they are very, very advanced in using smartphones already. And I think the key is to deliver your app in a way which is very easy to use, very easy to interact, also very much entertaining. And I think that's what we are trying to achieve here by being personalized. So our chatbot, Alisa, that we are using, several of our products doing that. It's really trying to bring this to a personal level, and also alerting in a personal manner if, let's say, deteriorations are coming down the road. That's for sure something which this company is aiming at.
Great, and thank you. There's another question on cloud technologies. So cloud technologies seem to be the future, but I've noticed that pharmaceutical companies are reluctant to host their data in the cloud due to the sensitivity. What's your experience on that?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it depends. Again, there are companies, and if I say companies, I not only mean pharma companies, but for example, hospitals, which are probably even more sensitive to this topic than pharmaceutical companies, who are very open to the topic of using cloud. And there are other companies, whether pharma companies or hospitals, which are very, I would say, restrictive and say, look, we don't want to put our data into the cloud. Just from a GDPR perspective, this is okay, right? I mean, this is nothing that speaks from a GDPR perspective against cloud, despite some other, I would say, rumors or misconceptions, misperceptions. But if needed, our platform can also be put, can be localized and put on premise. So we have built it in a technical way through Kubernetes clusters that we can also localize it if the partner wants to. Our preferred way is cloud. Obviously, it gives us more flexibility, but we can accommodate to whatever the partner wants and is looking for.
Perfect. Jonathan asks, what is your company vision for wearable technologies?
I wouldn't say we have a particular vision for wearable technologies because we are not a wearable technology company. I think our mission is that we want to build, or improve patient outcomes through, combining subjective and then objective, which then is more the wearable piece data, whether it's, very simple variables like, fitness trackers to very sophisticated variables. And we believe, and this maybe is a little bit touching on the vision thing, we believe that there's tremendous information out there, which is currently untapped and unused. There's a famous chart by IBM, I guess, which shows that more than 90, I guess even 95 or 98% of the data which would be available is not being used for clinical decision making. It's only, I would say, the 10 data pieces that a physician is gathering, but all the data we as a patient or we as people are generating is being unused. And of course, wearables play an important role in that. I think personal view is, of course, the more wearables become seamless, so you don't have to put something very clunky somewhere, but it becomes like a plaster or something which is not let's say in your way. The more I think wearables become also part of general, let's say, our general living. And then, as I said, the data which is being produced can be very insightful. There are numerous examples either in the papers or in the public domain, which shows that you can really detect very early on, let's say, deterioration of diseases, whether it's cognitive diseases, whether it's a depression or other cases, through subtle changes in either, for example, changing the way you treat your smartphone and other stuff to really specific variables. So I personally feel it's very powerful, but the question is, of course, and this is where we come into the game, how to bring this enormous amount of data to the point of decision, i.e. the physicians, and bring it in a way that the physicians are also kind of can deal with the data. Because I think the main feedback we get is that they don't want to be overwhelmed with digital and with data in particular. They want to have it part of their workflow, but also easy digestible for them, which is understandable given the workload that they're having. So you have to find a good way to take this data, package it, digest it, and present it to physicians. And this is where this is our core business, I would say.
Thank you. We have 3 more questions in the chat, I think, that have not been answered. One is, the USA has a very evolved legislative and regulatory framework, whereby a large portion of RPM is covered by CMS and on a per state basis by reimbursements, not in Europe. How do you deal with this?
Simple answer, we are not active in the US. Maybe because of that. No, it's a strategic decision at the moment not to be active in the US. Different reasons. One is simply company size. I think we are in Switzerland. Europe is at our fingertips. We also personally see a great opportunity in this new opportunity in Germany in particular. So we made a conscious decision not to focus on the US at the moment. This might change in 2 years, in 5 years, but at the moment, US is not in our focus. If there's a strong partner who brings us there, then we would be open, of course, but by ourselves, I would say not in the next 2 years or so.
Thank you, Ulrich. Someone is asking, Sandra is actually asking, how open are patients to using these tools? Is it all generations, or do you see, is it more, the younger ones use it more often than older ones? Any experience on that?
Yves, you want to?
I think I started to answer the question while I was giving an answer to another one. I think, of course, it depends very much on the use case. And we know that some people are much more, let's say, user savvy with smartphones and apps than others. So let's say in clinical practice, of course, we see a very big traction, for example, in pediatrics, where parents can ask questions about their kids. I mean, that's logical also in gynecology, for example. In the other, the chronic disease management, I think it's really going age group. Finished a bigger project at University Hospital Basel in the field of obesity, and we had participants really from all age groups. And I think they all did very well. They all said they want to continue with this. The more down the road we get, I think the more is it accepted also now during the Corona crisis in an accelerated way, that healthcare is and will be delivered also through smartphones.
Thank you, Yves. And then one last question was posed in the chat. What are the differences between healthcare and consumer companies?
Well, there are many. I mean, you mean consumer healthcare companies or consumer companies like Coca-Cola? But I assume it's consumer health companies. I mean, look, consumer health companies, by definition, I would say the consumer is also the payer. It's out of pocket, right? So you have to present something to a patient customer who is also willing to pay for the solution. We are mainly, as I said earlier, we are actually not addressing the patient as a consumer, i.e. payer. Of course, the patient is a consumer of our products, using it, so to say, but not paying for it. So therefore, we are probably in a bit more complicated network of stakeholders, because yes, our solutions have to be patient-centric and patient-friendly from a UX, UI perspective. At the same time, we have to convince other people to pay for it. I think this is one key difference. The other is regulation. I think the regulatory hurdles in healthcare are higher than in consumer healthcare, I would say, because again, it's a consumer decision to take it or not. In our case, it's also, as I said earlier, you have to follow medical device regulation and so forth. So net, it's probably more complicated in the healthcare space, but consumer space is probably more marketing driven. So it has all pros and cons, and you have to choose in which space you feel more comfortable, where you see more potential. And I think we, at the end of the day, see more potential in the healthcare space, because there's, in total, I think more than 9 trillion of healthcare spending, if not more, and most of it, or at least a large chunk of it, is not spent wisely and efficiently. And there's a lot to be done in the healthcare space through technologies like ours to make healthcare better, more patient-oriented, and of course more efficient at the end of the day, and to improve patient outcomes.
Great. Thanks, Ulrich. This was the last question posed in the chat. If there are any questions, please do post them or turn on your camera and talk to Ulrich and Yves directly. Maybe I'm sure you have addressed it in your presentation, but once again, what kind of partners are you looking for? I mean, this is also a good platform to reach out, and how do you normally collaborate with them? Would you like to comment on that?
If you want to start, or shall I start? So from a customer perspective, as I mentioned earlier, we have probably 3 customer groups. It's pharmaceutical companies, it's hospitals, whether it's regular hospitals or university hospitals, and insurance companies. This is our, I would say, customer base. And then, of course, we have the 4th bucket is, I would call them partners, in terms of technology partners, knowledge partners, scientific partners. And the typical way to engage or to start is really, define a very concrete use case, pain point, thing you want to get solved. And then, you've probably seen we have a very broad set of functionalities and features, and also the team itself, Yves and myself, are pretty experienced to also help you to maybe shape your question. And then we usually start with a pilot, call it proof of concept, although these terms are also a little bit, misused sometimes, but also have a clear roadmap in terms of, okay, if this is successful, what are the next steps to scale it and to roll it out broadly, whether globally or in certain markets. And this is, we are now pursuing with a few of our partners. So we have also started with very concrete, I would say, action-oriented or pain point-oriented projects. And now we are talking with them, also have already signed contracts even to roll it out globally, or let's say broadly. And it started, but with a very specific question or scientific, let's say, project, whether it's a study, as it was asked earlier, whether we support studies, for instance, whether it's a concrete case in a hospital, whether it's patient onboarding or supporting patients while they cannot come to the hospital, or whether it's, for example, jointly developing a digital therapeutic. This can all be use cases that we can support. And the good news is, since we're not disease specific, we are also pretty broad in terms of the diseases we can engage. We have already deliver or kind of gained experiences in a couple of disease areas, ranging from obesity to respiratory diseases to now COVID-19, for instance. But we are very open to other disease areas, and we're also capable of addressing those, because at the end of the day, it's a mixture of technical features which come from us and the disease expertise which often comes from the partner or the customer in this case.
Great. Thank you, Ulrich. I don't have any further questions. Is there anything you would like to further talk about? I think we still have around 20 people listening.
I don't know, Yves, do you have something that you want to talk about?
I'd like to encourage everybody that was here together with us today to reach out on email or on LinkedIn to connect with us. And if you have an interesting project down the road, of course, we are always very eager to try to work together. But I see there's a new question flying in.
There is indeed. Evelyn asks, which patient data are the most interesting to collect? Which data are you able to collect so far? And yes, she believes it widely depends on the disease you are testing, you are treating, excuse me.
I can address this question from several different angles. You know, there's a scientific interest, and then there's also, I would say, a feasibility interest. So from a feasibility interest, I think the most interesting patient data to collect are data that or almost seamlessly, meaning the patient do anything else than what he's usually doing. As an example, I can mention one of the technologies we are using together with our partner IBM in asthma and COPD management. It's a cough and wheezing detection during the night, which is captured by the microphone of the smartphone. So here the patient does not need to do anything. The app is turned on in the background in an automated way during the night. It's basically recognizing any time. And that data is extremely valuable to, first of all, have a better understanding about your disease state, but also in the future to be able to see if you're, for example, going into to reduce healthcare costs by being able to see this upfront. I think to see that subjective data is highly useful. So even patient-reported outcome data, and again, I think we made the point what makes us a little bit special and different to other companies in the field. We are combining those data points, so subjective and objective data, and we even have the opportunity and possibility to fuse that data which is coming from the patient with the clinical data that is sitting in the hospitals. And I think a combination of that data is the most meaningful. Ulrich, maybe you want to add something?
I would say the most interesting data is the speech pattern of Yves at the moment, because it's like, it's kind of compressed, and then you can't hear anything. It's compressed, so it's very difficult to hear Yves. But no, but I understood and got what you said, and I think I agree. So it depends a little bit on the case. B, you chose the example of coughing and wheezing, which I think is a good one, because it's data which I'm not sure who's aware of or who's a specialist in asthma and COPD, but there's this famous CAT score or asthma score, and physicians are asking the patients, how often do you cough during night? And who can answer this question seriously or kind of reliably? And if you can now replace this subjective question, which is very important, of course, for the physician, by objective data, I think this is very powerful, and this is what we are trying to do in this particular example that Yves mentioned. So I think again, this question is probably a bit difficult to answer generally, but I think if you can replace subjective data, which, as Yves said correctly, is also interesting sometimes, but you can replace subjective data by probably more powerful objective data. I think this is a very interesting case, which we're also looking at.
Wonderful. I don't have any more questions. I leave it up to you, how you would like to proceed. If you want to end, there are still 15 people in the group, but yeah, we can finish the session here. If that's all right with you, Ulrich.
I mean, it's a bit difficult to engage a discussion if you don't know exactly the pattern of people. So you try to drive it in one direction, but then maybe the 40 people are. So either you guys join this conversation and then we can discuss, obviously, or you ask questions which we're happy to answer. If I now pick a topic, this might be not interesting maybe for the 14 people who are still in the discussion. So I would rather say if there are no further questions, we can also, stop it here. And then, of course, as Yves said, we are more than happy if you reach out to us either via emails, which we showed in the presentation, or through Rahel and the colleagues from Switzerland Innovation Park, or through LinkedIn. You can definitely follow up. And those who are on campus, and as I said earlier, life is coming back to campus. We can also, of course, meet here over coffee and then chat. So maybe this is a opportunity to take it from here.
Great statement. Absolutely true. Please do visit us on campus. And get to know all the startups. By now, I think we have around 17 residents in our space. So we have a few more open mics to do, and are of course looking forward or hoping that we can make some useful connections for these startups that are located with us. But I would say, we can finish the session here. Thanks a lot, Ulrich and Yves, for your inputs. I think that was super valuable, and the questions were many. This was great. Thanks again, and I hope that you will have some interesting conversations after this event and inspired some future connections.
Great. Thanks, Rahel, for your moderation and for the invitation to participate. And thanks to all those 13 who are still around, but also, of course, the others who joined earlier, for giving us the opportunity to present ourselves. And looking forward to future conversations.
Wonderful. So thanks a lot, and have a sunny afternoon.
At least here in Basel, yeah, that's true.
At least here in Basel. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.